My best friend just told me she's my niece. I can't breathe. Casey and I have been best friends for as long as I can remember, and I mean that literally. There is not a single memory from my childhood that doesn't have her in it. Our moms were inseparable. They met at a neighborhood block party back in 2004, and after that, it was like they became one unit. Friday dinners, Sunday church, every holiday, every birthday, every ordinary Tuesday that somehow became a sleepover. So by the time Casey and I were old enough to form our own memories, we didn't have to try to be friends. We just were. We shared everything. First day of kindergarten, same class, sat next to each other, matching backpacks by accident. Little League soccer in third grade. We both quit after 2 weeks because we were genuinely terrible. Our first crushes in middle school. Hers was a boy named Derek, who didn't know she existed. Mine was a boy named Tyler, who very much knew I existed and still chose to ignore me. When we turned 14, our moms threw us a joint birthday party. Pink and gold decorations across the entire backyard. A custom cake with both our names on it. They made a whole scrapbook of photos from every year of our friendship and presented it to us in front of everyone. Casey and I were so embarrassed we could barely look at each other. But we kept that scrapbook. It's still sitting on my shelf right now. We were not just friends. We were family. Or at least, that's what I thought. Last spring, I moved to Boston for college. It was the first time in my entire life that Casey and I had ever been in different cities. We promised each other it wouldn't change anything. Weekly FaceTime calls, a shared playlist we both added to, countdown to Thanksgiving break. And for a while, it was fine. But then, somewhere around October, something shifted. Casey started taking longer to reply. One-word answers. Canceled 2 FaceTimes in a row. I told myself she was busy adjusting to life without me around, picking up more hours at work, finding her footing. I wasn't going to be that friend who made her guilt trip about it. Then, during winter break, I came home and noticed something kind of strange. Casey had gotten really close with my mom. Like, closer than usual. They were already close, they always had been. But this felt different. They'd go on walks together. My mom would mention Casey in conversation in this careful, gentle way, like she was choosing her words. One night, I walked into the kitchen and they stopped talking the moment they heard me. I asked my mom about it. She just smiled and said Casey missed me and needed some extra support while I was gone. That made sense to me, so I let it go. But then I went back to Boston, and Casey got even more distant. We went from one-word answers to no answers at all. She left me on read for 11 days straight. I went back through our messages trying to figure out what I had done wrong. I couldn't find anything. And then, last night, after 2 months of silence, she finally texted me. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was 4 sentences that made my entire world stop. I didn't know how to tell you this. Your mom has been helping me figure out how to say it. I found something out about my family a few months ago, and it changes everything between us. You're not my best friend. You're my aunt. I have been staring at my phone for 6 hours. Watch the full video for more. I didn't sleep at all. I just kept reading the same 4 sentences over and over until the words stopped making sense. You're my aunt. I'm 19 years old. I'm a freshman in college. I still call my mom when I can't figure out the laundry machines. And apparently I have a niece, who is also my best friend, who I have known my entire life. I called Casey back immediately. She didn't pick up. I called 3 more times. Nothing. So I did the only thing I could think to do at 2 in the morning. I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring, which told me everything. She was awake. She was waiting. Mom? I didn't even know what question to ask first. Is it true? She went completely silent, and that silence was its own answer. I think I said her name 4 or 5 times before she finally spoke, and when she did, her voice was so careful, so measured, like she had rehearsed this exact moment 100 times and still wasn't ready for it. She told me to come home. I told her to tell me right now. Another silence. Then, yes, it's true. The room tilted. I sat down on my dorm room floor and I just stayed there. Because here's the thing about growing up with someone your whole life. You build an entire understanding of who you are to each other. Casey was my best friend, full stop. That was a fact as solid as anything I knew about myself. And in one text message, that fact had just been pulled out from under me and replaced with something I didn't have any framework for. If Casey is my niece, then one of my siblings is her parent. I'm the youngest of 4. I have 3 older siblings, and one of them, at some point, had a baby. A baby that became my best friend. A baby that I held and grew up alongside, without ever knowing. I asked my mom which one. She said, "Come home, we'll talk properly. This isn't a phone conversation." I booked a flight back to Houston for Friday. That was 2 days ago. I land in 4 hours, and I genuinely do not know what I'm walking into. Update. My mom picked me up from the airport alone. No siblings, no Casey. Just her, standing at arrivals in the gray cardigan she's had for 15 years, looking like she hadn't slept either. We hugged for a long time. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. We just stood there in the middle of George Bush Intercontinental while people moved around us with their suitcases. On the drive home, she told me the basics. My oldest brother, Marcus. He was 23 when it happened. Casey's mom, her aunt, was never supposed to be involved. It was a situation that got complicated fast. A relationship that wasn't a relationship. And when Casey's mom found out she was pregnant, she made a decision. She didn't want Marcus involved. She didn't want the baby to grow up with that confusion. So she raised Casey herself, told her family a version of the story that left Marcus out entirely, and moved on. Marcus knew. He's always known. He just never told anyone. Except he told my mom, eventually, years later, and my mom kept it. I sat in the passenger seat processing this, and the only thing I could say was, "How long have you known?" She kept her eyes on the road. Since Casey was 3. Casey is 19. My mom has known for 16 years. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed Marcus's car was already there, and my sister Brianna's, and my other brother Dion's. They were all inside waiting. Apparently, while I was on the plane, my mom had called a family meeting. Everyone knew I was coming home. Everyone had been briefed. Everyone except me had already had time to sit with this. I walked into my own house and felt like a stranger. Marcus couldn't look at me. He was sitting at the kitchen table staring at his hands like they were the most interesting thing in the room. Brianna gave me a hug that lasted too long, in the way hugs do when someone feels guilty. Dion handed me a glass of water like that was going to help. I looked at Marcus, and I said the only thing that made sense to say. "Does Casey know you're her dad?" He nodded slowly. "When did she find out?" 4 months ago. 4 months ago. That's exactly when she started going distant. I asked to see Casey that same night. My mom called her, and 20 minutes later she pulled up outside. I watched from the window as she sat in her car for a full 5 minutes before getting out. And when she finally came through the front door and saw me standing in the hallway, her face crumpled immediately. She started crying before either of us said a word. And honestly, so did I. Because this was still Casey. The same Casey who split a birthday cake with me at 14. The same Casey who stayed on the phone with me for 3 hours the night before I left for Boston because neither of us wanted to say goodbye. The same person I had loved my whole life. The information was new. She wasn't. We sat on the back porch for 2 hours, just the two of us. She told me everything. How she found out, she had done a DNA test on a whim, one of those ancestry kits, thought it would be fun. How a name came up that she didn't recognize. How she started digging. How she eventually confronted her mom. How her mom finally told her the truth about Marcus. She said the hardest part wasn't finding out who her dad was. It was realizing that my mom had known her whole life, that every birthday party, every sleepover, every Friday dinner, my mom had looked at her knowing exactly who she was to our family and never said a word. She didn't know whether to feel loved or deceived. She said most days it felt like both at the same time. I asked her why she pulled away from me when she found out. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Because I didn't know if you'd still want me the same way once you knew. I didn't know if it would be weird. I didn't know if I was losing my best friend and gaining a family, or losing everything at once." I didn't have a clean answer for her. I still don't. Because here's where it gets even more complicated. Marcus wants a relationship with her. Casey isn't sure she wants that. Her mom is furious that the truth came out at all. My siblings are divided on what happens next. And my mom, the person who held this secret for 16 years, is now at the center of a family that doesn't quite know how to look at each other anymore. And I'm sitting here, trying to figure out who I am in all of this. Her best friend. Her aunt. Both. Neither. I fly back to Boston on Sunday. I don't know what I'm leaving behind. Update. The night before I flew back to Boston, Casey and I went to our spot. There's a diner about 10 minutes from my mom's house that we've been going to since we were 12. Terrible fluorescent lighting, booths with cracked red vinyl, the best pancakes in Houston. We used to go there after every school dance, every bad day, every time one of us needed to talk without the rest of the world listening. We got our usual table, we ordered our usual food, and for a little while, it felt almost normal. Almost. She told me she'd agreed to have one dinner with Marcus. Just dinner. No expectations, no labels, just two people sitting across from each other, trying to figure out if there's something there worth building. She said my mom had offered to be there as a kind of neutral ground. I thought that was equal parts brave and chaotic. I told her I supported her, whatever she decided. I told her that nothing that happened in that family meeting changed the fact that she was my person, that the word aunt was just a word, that we had 19 years of history that no DNA test could reorganize. She laughed a little at that. First real laugh I'd heard from her in months. But then she got quiet again and said something I keep turning over in my head even now, sitting in my dorm room in Boston with my cold coffee and my unanswered readings. She said, "I just keep thinking about all the versions of us that existed while this secret was sitting right underneath them. Like, were any of those moments real?" And I said, "Every single one of them was real. The secret was fake. We weren't." I don't know if that was the right thing to say, but it was the truest thing I had. I flew back Sunday morning. She dropped me at departures. We hugged the way we always do. Too tight, too long. She texted me when I landed, just, "Same time next week for FaceTime?" I said yes before the plane finished taxiing. We don't have everything figured out. The family is still a mess. Marcus and Casey's dinner hasn't happened yet. Her mom still isn't speaking to my mom. There are conversations that haven't been had and probably won't be for a long time. But Casey is still my best friend. And I guess now, she's also my niece. Honestly, knowing her, I think she was always both. Follow for more stories.